Save the Semantics, episode 349. It is October 23rd, 2025. My name is Myro. This is the podcast where I ramble on for a bit about some shit. Recording this on a Thursday night. I am recording this in between at halftime of the Nuggets Warriors game. Because I just couldn't find the time to squeeze in and talk about the other games, last night's games, because last night was kind of crazy. There's a lot of stuff going on. I'm not going to be able to get to everything, but yeah, I mean, there's a lot of stuff to talk about, just within this frame, and so I'll probably catch up with more of those things this weekend. But yeah, I mean, right now I'll just take some quick hitters off. This is probably gonna be pretty quick. As I said, I'm recording this in between during the halftime show, so I do want to get back and watch the game. But I do also want to talk about yesterday's game because there were a slew of really interesting matchups and interesting games. Not to mention like Wembanyama going crazy. But let's start off with like the big news that occurred this morning. Chauncey Billups, Terry Rozier got arrested by the FBI for gambling related incidents, basically. I am not surprised that it was going to get to this point. I think so. So based on like, I read into this a little bit. I listened to some podcasts because of course I did. From my understanding, it seems that there are like two separate issues. One is related to betting on like games, or, there's like, or providing information about games, like players not being out or players not playing during games or whatever. The other thing is like, is Chauncey Billups being involved in a poker gambling scheme with the mafia, which is a whole crazy thing. That's like a whole separate thing. I that's like not, it is related, but it's also not related. I think they just sort of like combine the two arrests. I don't know. Anyways, none of this is surprising to me, right? Like after the Jonte Porter news that came out about him getting a sentence after his whole, his sports betting fiasco last year and last season. And then you got Malik Beasley. Terry Rozier has already had like the NBA investigation. So I just feel like there was going to be like another, like they weren't just the only pieces to be involved in this kind of thing. I'm just going to continue to reiterate what I've already said about sports gambling. The fact that it has gotten legalized to the point where there is so much exposure in just like the public space and everything, it is almost like, what did you expect, right? I understand, like these decisions being made by players and coaches is dumb, but it led to this point because I don't think it's crazy to make the leap that because of this current environment where we're in, where there is so much exposure to gambling in every single facet of the sports viewing experience, like you're bound to find examples of where players cross that line, right? Like gambling is an addiction. There's a reason why it's called an addiction, is because it's a mental issue, right? It is an addiction to the same manner in which drug addiction, alcohol addiction, all of these other types of addictions, it's classified in that same way for a particular reason, right? And again, it does not excuse the person's actions for what they did, but it is a part of the reason why they might have done something rashly or recklessly, right? So I think I don't know what the ramifications of all of these things are going to be. It's going to be interesting to seeing what the Trailblazers situation is going to look like, right? Like, they're not going to bring him back. Right now, Tiago Splitter, shout out Tiago Splitter, is the interim head coach for the Blazers. But this is kind of like my whole thing. There's going to be even further ramifications on top of what we've already been dealing with of just crippling gambling addiction on it's going to be like a type of health, like a world, like a national health epidemic of sorts. It sounds a bit, maybe that's like a bit extreme to be exclaiming that, but I really do feel that way in some instances. I think that there's going to be things that people are going to be dealing with years down the line, that like researchers and stuff like that are going to look at this period, just this explosion of sports betting across the board in American leagues, and how much of an effect that has had on the American public. I think there's going to be like a lot of evidence that suggests that this is going to be like a type of health issue. And I think what's going to happen, this might be 10, 20, maybe even further down the line, where they're going to try to revert it, right? That's kind of my expectation. I think there's going to be a reversal. I think there's going to be enough backlash to where people are like, there's like, we're already seeing like real life consequences of people that are dealing with this kind of stuff. But I think there's going to be further issue of it. It's awful. It sucks. I just think, it's just like, I don't know. I'm just kind of like throwing up my hands. I'm like, what did we expect? You know what I mean? It's like, it's really not going to shock me if there's like further evidence of tampering, right? I mean, there's been evidence of refs betting against the game in the early 2000s, right? Like the Kings-Lakers series back in 2003 with like Tom Donaghy. Like that's like very clear evidence. So it's like, now that there is so much there is even more of this business of gambling in just the air. Like, it's in everything that we consume in terms of sports. Like, it would not shock me that there's going to be further incidents of this. And it's like, oh my God, how could this happen? It's kind of ridiculous to even be, I don't know, people who are shocked by this. I understand being shocked with like Chauncey Billups being involved. Like, I think it is ridiculous and silly that he's even a part of this, right? But I just think that, I don't know. And then you could kind of like point to the whole FBI being involved in all of this, and I don't know. I think I think someone like Kash Patel is a clown and everything, but it's just this swirling kind of shitstorm that was bound to happen. And I think it's not going to have a clean conclusion anytime soon unless there are actual regulations reinstalled for these kinds of things. The issue is the money. How much money is the league generating because of all of these bets and everything? How much money are these betting companies making because of just how much exposure they're getting and how much advertisement they're getting, right? So just because there's so much money in this thing now, like, how do you counter that? I bet there's gonna be examples of just lobby. I mean, it probably already exists. I just don't know the full details of lobbying from these types of companies, including sports leagues that have seen just like an increase in revenue because of, like, it's complicated, but I also don't think it's that complicated. I think that sports betting is an addiction. It's an issue. Like, I understand there are ways that you can be responsible for it in the similar way that you can be responsible with alcohol and whatever, right? But ultimately, it's one of those things where, like here's the thing. Here's another thing. I'm jumping all over the place. I'll, my main point is that, like, what did we expect, right? Like, this was just kind of coming, and there's going to be further fallout. There's going to be further issues that happen down the line, and there's going to be there's going to be larger ramifications that people are going to have to deal with, right? And that the populace is going to have to deal with. I really don't think it's that much of an exaggeration to say that, considering how much sports is like a part of the American public's lives. So it's just sort of like we're just kind of like waiting to see, as unfortunate as it is, as sort of foreboding as that sounds, like that's kind of the reality we're in. Here's the other piece I wanted to get to. So I listen to a lot of podcasts when I work and stuff, and I work out. I listen to basketball podcasts primarily, sports podcasts, other sports podcasts once in a while. The majority of them are sponsored by, gambling companies, because it's like, it's lucrative, right? And I will not, like, it's hard to get like a lucrative sponsorship, I think, right? Especially if you're maybe a smaller to like a mid-tier podcast. Like, I don't think you're not going to be getting like a lot of advertisement from other types of sponsorships, because if your viewership is like lower, there's like, how much of those subscribers are you going to be able to convert to, paying for like a service, right? With betting, as I've talked about before, with sports betting, it is directly tied to the content that you're selling, right? Or the content that you're putting out. Like, if you're like a basketball podcast and you're advertising for, I don't know, some type of like, one of those like homemade meal companies or whatever, it's less, I think there's less of like less of a connection between the product and the thing that you're talking about. Sports betting is like a direct thing. It's like, oh, I'm talking about this sport. You want to try to, try your hand at, betting and seeing whether your favorite player scores a certain amount of points or gets a certain amount of rebounds. That's like such an easy conversion, I feel. So the direct tie means that the betting company, the gambling company, is more likely to be able to garner money. Like, this is, again, this is all like hypothetical, but I feel like this makes a lot of sense, right? There's a reason why betting companies are like the premier and the primary source of advertisement for so many podcasts, because of the direct connection between the content that they're putting out and, the service that they're selling, right? So it's like easy to make that connection, I think, as opposed to other types of sponsorships. So people got to make their money. Like, this is like, for a lot of people, this is their livelihood. A lot of content creators, like, creating content for basketball is their career, which I think is admirable, right? It's just the unfortunate truth is that they're not going to be able to find other types of sponsorships that are going to pay as well as betting companies, because of that just inherent connection. And so you see that, and then if you listen, once in a while they'll, I'll hear about the like, you got like Bill Simmons talking about that all the time in every single podcast, but I've heard other podcasters talk about how when they do bet, it's like, oh, I'm down. Oh, my lifetime earnings is negative. They are never, I have never heard a single one of them be up. They are always down. They have always lost more money than they have earned. So I just feel like that in itself is like an indication that you are losing. You will always lose in this situation, right? You may win, but you're going to continue to gamble because it's addicting. That's the issue. I had the same kind of feeling when I went to Vegas for like a work trip earlier this year. And, I set aside some money to gamble, with like the expectation that I was going to lose it and I wasn't really going to earn it. But that's like the thing, though. You have to go in with the expectation of not getting anything back. And that's just the problem, right? So many people, so many people that are, you know, that might be, taken advantage of because of their financial situation may look to gambling as a way to alleviate their financial issues, when in reality it makes it worse, right? And it's just so hard to, it's hard to like convey that. But I think you just have to look at the numbers. You just talk to people, right? Like, rarely, like maybe 1 out of 1 million people are up when they sports gamble or when they sports bet. And then if you got people like, if you do have someone like Bill Simmons, like he's already like a millionaire because he has his own, podcasting company and his own just publication company. So he doesn't, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how much he's betting. He already is like, he's already a millionaire. So it has no bearing, right? So when he talks about like these prop bets or whatever, like it doesn't matter because it's probably chump change to someone like him. So but then if you compare that to other people from other realms and other podcasts and that kind of thing, I guarantee you most of them are down. Most of them have lost money than they have earned it. So it's just like, or they're at like a net loss overall, right? Lifetime earnings is at like a negative. And I don't know. It's an addictive pleasure. It is on this. It's the same as alcohol. It's the same as some other types of drugs. I think there are ways in which you can enjoy gambling to an extent. Like I enjoy card games. Like I love stuff like Balatro, but you're not like, which has, it's like it's a card game with some gambling elements to it, but you're not spending actual money playing it, right? So I understand the appeal of playing games and so the risk and reward factor of it. But I just think that there needs to be more regulation. That's just like the end all be all. That's just what it comes down to, is that there needs to be more regulation for these kinds of things. That's it. That's my spiel. I'm not surprised at all by all of these things that are popping up. It's just unfortunate. I just think this is just like an obvious result of all of the things that are happening. Anyways, let's talk about some good stuff. Let's talk about basketball. Let's talk about some actual hoops. So last night, really, really fun slate of games. I obviously didn't get the chance to watch all of them because there were like 12, 13 games on. So I watched like a handful, and I watched some highlights here and there. So here are my thoughts. Here are some notes that I jotted down. I watched the Bulls and the Pistons game, home opener for the Bulls. Really fun team. Kind of like a continuation of that sort of energy, that sort of momentum that they had last year. And then you got Buzelis, who's looking to just make a leap following last year. I've already talked about him being one of my most exciting and anticipated players of this upcoming season. And he had some fun moments there. I think the Bulls team is going to be fun. I don't know how good they're going to be, but if they're going to be moving up and down the floor and move with that kind of pace, I think that they're going to be a fun watch, regardless of how good they are. But considering that they're in the East, they do have a chance to make something happen. Like, could they potentially avoid the play-in? I have no idea. I think it's easier to like expect them to just be in the play-in as they have been for like the last 4 years. But it would be like a nice change of pace if they somehow manage to be competitive and get into the actual playoffs. I said this very earlier on, Wembanyama, crazy. I didn't get to watch the game itself, but I watched some of the highlights is last night or this morning. I don't remember. Just insane. Like he's just, it's super human. I think every time he does something, it's incredible. How do you look at him and not think he's going to be one of the greatest players, right? Barring any health issues. So it's just going to be something. I don't know and they completely dominated the Mavericks last night. I don't know, like, what's it gonna be? What's the next step gonna be? That's just gonna be exciting. I also watched some parts of the Raptors Hawks game. Hawks just looked really bad start from Atlanta, right? Not exactly the most encouraging considering the moves that they've made. I had them pretty high up on my sort of quote unquote rankings. Yeah, not a great start. It's just one game, but I think they got some things that they need to tighten up, especially the defense. The defense was atrocious. Like the Raptors were just running them out of the gym. I mean, the Raptors were playing well too. Like they were playing a lot of heavy, high pressure, ball pressure, and they were just running, and just kind of continuing to just do like fast breaks and stuff. So that was kind of like an obvious result. You got the Timberwolves Blazers. That was kind of like the later game, one of the latter games that I saw towards the end of the night. Ant put up like a clutch shot to win the game. It's to kind of seal the game. So that was pretty fun. But the Blazers they're going to be a tough team. Like I think I don't know I'm curious what it's going to look like under like Splitter or whoever, he's the interim now. I don't know if they're going to do like a mid-season hire for a new coach, but are they going to be able to kind of maintain that approach and under sort of like a new leadership? That'll be interesting to watch, but they do have the personnel to be like a really tough defensive team. Knicks looked really good against the Cavs. First half, they were pretty, I don't want to say dominant, but they looked really confident with like the new system with Mike Brown, movement offense or motion offense, off ball, Jalen Brunson, all that kind of stuff. So they looked good in the first half. They kind of they got a little sloppy. They took the foot off the gas a little bit. The Cavs kind of got back into it. Donovan Mitchell was making some shots. Sam Merrill was making some shots towards the end of the game. But I felt like the Knicks had like a pretty good hold on this game throughout. So they look good. And they played 11 players instead of 8, as they have in under Tibbs. So that's probably good. That's probably a good thing. I didn't watch like this game, but I watched the highlights. VJ Edgecombe looked awesome. I was already I talked. This is like the one player I remember like I talked about in like before the draft because I heard some names. I'm like, that's like an awesome name. And then I saw some of the highlights he had in college, and I was like, yeah, I like this dude. And then, yeah, I feel good about that. I feel good about that kind of like feeling because he looked awesome. He was like super athletic. He was just jumping all over the place. He was making shots, 34 points in his rookie debut. I like that. Him pairing alongside Tyrese Maxey, I think is a pretty fun combo. And yeah, maybe it's going to be, it might be more exciting with like the newer players for the 76ers instead of, maybe kind of transitioning from this Embiid era to like a Maxey-led team. I think is probably the right move considering Embiid's health and everything like that. Paul George is still injured. Yeah, let's turn this team into like the youth movement, I think. Because based on the highlights I saw, they looked fun. And I really like Edgecombe. I liked him before he got drafted because I was on top of that, But anyways, yeah, so those are my thoughts on last night's games. There's, there were 12 games. I'm not going to be able to get to everything. So yeah, the third quarter is already starting for the Warriors Nuggets, so I'm going to get back to that. And then tomorrow we got a whole slew of games. So that's going to be exciting. More games, NBA opening week, some really great stuff. And like aside from all of the scandals that are happening, it's been good basketball. So hopefully that continues. But anyways, that's going to do it for now. Thanks for listening as always. This has been Save the Semantics, signing off.